Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here with another episode of the Planar project. Today we're looking at the latest IEM from the embattled boutique brand known as FatFreq. These interesting looking guys here are the FatFreq Quantum. They're a new single planar IEM featuring the same NOA module system that FatFreq uses on the Grand Maestro, priced at $775 US. Featuring an Effect Audio Aries S2 cable as a stock cable and coming with a full set of NOA modules. Can the Quantum live up to the fond memories I had at CanJam Dallas? Well, let's see. Alright, so this disclaimer is going to be a little bit different than normal. First of all, I purchased this Quantum for review, but not at full price. As many of you might be aware, FatFreq is allowing Deuce pre-order buyers to use a 30% off coupon as a sort of fence-mending, bridge-fixing measure after the fiasco that was the launch and pre-order campaign for the FatFreq Deuce. For this video, I have gone ahead and activated the paid promotion feature because I got this at a discount, and not all of you will be able to do that. So thank you very much to Yo and the whole team at FatFreq for this, and a huge shout out to my friend Wayne from Make It Wayne, who helped me communicate with FatFreq and get this sent out, I think, a little bit before it was actually up for sale. Really appreciate it, dude. Thank you so much. Check out his content up here in the little box or down there in the description. He does great reviews. Thanks again, Wayne. So I myself have only unboxed two FatFreq products, the Quantum and the Deuce, and the unboxing experience is essentially identical. Inside the Quantum box here, you will find the classic FatFreq Welcome to the Family card. You will find the metal carrying case, a full set of Tri-Clarion ear tips, a cleaning tool, and the blue and black NOA modules. The Superstage modules are already attached to the IEM here. FatFreq calls the blue ones the control modules and the black ones the power modules, respectively. The case here is the classic all-metal FatFreq screw top case. Nice, very, can you see it? Yeah, there you go. Sort of felt-lined interior, protect the IEM from bumps and scratches. While it is sort of scratch protective, it is not very impact resistant. This is the definition of crush resistant. You're not crushing this. But if this gets tossed around, the IEMs in there, if you don't have them packed fairly well, are going to be bumping around inside and maybe hurting themselves a little bit. I do like the case. FatFreq sells sort of personalized versions of these. This one, as you can see, features the Effect Audio branding on here because it's a collab case. Yeah, it's quite nice. Overall, in terms of accessories, for $775, this is not great. There's sets that cost half of this that include, 3 or 4 types of ear tips, a much more pocketable case, a modular cable, a cleaning cloth, a cleaning tool, really anything besides this sort of bare bones package here. FatFreq is a boutique brand. I don't mind this as much. It's very clear to me that they took all the money they saved from the accessories and put them into the design of the IEMs here. FatFreq is well known to do that. I still think it would have been nice to maybe have a second set of ear tips or even a modular cable. But speaking of the cable, let me move this out of the way, and we'll take a closer look at the Aries S2 from Effect Audio. It's actually my first exposure to any Effect Audio cable. I was expecting a lot. This is a hand-woven 8-wire braid that splits into 4-wire braids at the Y-split here. The version included here on the Quantum is the 4.4mm termination, so you don't get the swappable Term X system that they can offer on other cables. You just get the standard 4.4 version that's not removable at all. I didn't know this was unscrewable, by the way. I went to go adjust it in one of my amps because, as you can see, the cable exhibits a bit of memory, which we'll talk about in a second, and it started unscrewing itself from me, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, I like this connector. It features the Effect Audio branding on it. Those indents on the side make it easy to pull out of amps. It looks quite nice. The Y-split here has carbon fiber with copper inlaid into it for a sort of nice matching look with the all copper of the cable. The chin slider here, I'm not a fan of. It honestly feels like a bit of an afterthought. It looks and feels like the top of the Y-split here just sort of came unglued and is loose on the cable. It gets caught awkwardly and doesn't slide up and down right. It does hold the cable in place if you're sort of walking or moving around, so it does work. It doesn't have the same level of polish that sort of the rest of the hardware has. It doesn't seem like it's designed as nicely as this or the 2-pin connectors, which we'll talk about in a second. The 2-pin connectors here feature very clear left and right stereo markings on them. And as you can see here, these feature Effect Audio's Con-X system. You can unscrew these from the bottom here and swap these out for Pentacon, MMCX, or whatever other adapters you want. Those are available to buy separately. Hardware on this cable is very, very nice. It's clearly bespoke. It's one of my favorite things about this cable. Things I don't like so much. The feel of the cable itself. Being a hand-woven sort of cable with their sort of special sauce blends of copper, I was expecting something maybe a little bit more supple and pliable. My example, as you can see, exhibits a good deal of memory that I just haven't been able to train it out of, especially sort of here coming out of the 4.4mm connection. It just doesn't feel as nice in the hands as maybe I was expecting. It does roadie wrap rather well. It does feel very premium. Whether or not I would actually myself pay $200 for this cable, personally I would not. If I was going to drop $200 on a cable, I would want a modular jack and I would want some Con-X sort of things included. You can see memory going on there. But yeah, it's fine. It definitely feels premium, even if it's not exactly to my personal tastes in terms of cable. Okay, now that we've got the cable to behave, let's take a closer look at the industrial design of the Quantum here. It's different. It's a very uniquely shaped IEM compared to basically anything else that I have personally encountered. In terms of material, the lower shells here are interesting in terms of material choice. It feels harder and stiffer to me than resin, and it's got this very interesting looking surface finish. It might be resin, but it feels to me more like, glass fiber reinforced nylon or even some sort of metal. These could be FDM printed. I know FatFreq is all about their acoustic structures on the inside, so it wouldn't surprise me if these are FDM printed, but they don't seem to claim anything of that sort or describe this material anywhere on their website, so I'm not going to claim anything if I don't know it. As you can see, the nozzles are located in the sort of middle of the body of the IEM rather than closer to the point down here. That is to accommodate the mounting point for the NOAA module here. Pull this one off. There you go. You can see there's a little bit of a grill, and it leads to this large acoustic chamber here that the NOAA module attaches to. Make sure it's facing the right way up. I like the FatFreq logo facing the right way up. It just makes me happy. The NOAA modules here act as pressure relief for the front volume of the IEM, and as you can see here, the rear volume has a rather large vent on the back. Both of those things combined means that I didn't experience any driver flex or pressure buildup issues here on the Quantum, which is good. Speaking of the faceplate, it is stainless steel and shaped like the lowercase letter B with this rather large grill sort of in the center of the B, if you will. At the top of the B here is the 2-pin connection, which as you can see is recessed. And judging by the amount of material around the 2-pin connection, I would say FatFreq has learned their lesson from the deuce, so cable swap should be a much less stressful prospect here. The construction here feels extremely, extremely solid. The material they're using for those lower shells is nice and weighty. It feels really good. This should last a good long while, even if they do look like a rather cool science project. So let's go ahead and talk about the Quantum specifications. Quantum is powered by a single large planar driver. I don't have any information about the driver itself. I don't know if it's a single voice coil or a double voice coil, single or double-sided magnet. I know nothing about it. It's safe to assume that this driver is sort of similar in construction and overall design to the rest of the planar drivers on the market. But I don't have any solid concrete information on that. FatFreq does not publish impedance or sensitivity specifications for this driver, but I did measure the impedance on my unit. This is the graph here. It's 35.5 ohms at 1 kilohertz, and as you can see from the impedance graph here, it's essentially a flat line, meaning that impedance adapters won't really do anything to the sound on the Quantum. The Quantum is a little on the harder to drive side, just based on my anecdotal testing. I would say this is about as difficult to drive as the sort of KZ-PR2 or PRX family of planars, so you'll most likely want at least an entry-level dongle to push these with mobile devices. In terms of sort of weight and size, these are the second heaviest IEM in my collection by shell weight at just under 15 grams per side with the Superstage modules in place. Once you add in the Aries S2 cable, the entire package comes in at just barely under 60 grams. Again, isn't the heaviest IEM that I've personally weighed, but it isn't too far off. Unlike the Deuce and its chunky nozzles, the Quantum's nozzles are only 6.1 millimeters at their widest point, but their unconventional placement in the sort of middle of the shell might do things to affect comfort. But yeah, outside of the sort of NOAA modules and the strange shape and where the nozzle is, I would say the Quantum has the on-paper specifications of a typical planar IEM. Let's go ahead and pull up the cool wall. And when I first saw these in person at CanJam Dallas, I asked Yo, I said, is this the final, design? And he said, oh, well, I can't say anything, so I didn't know. And then I saw the pictures on FatFreq's website, and I said, oh, okay, I guess that was the final design. And I was a bit conflicted by the design. Seeing it in person, again, these are mine now. I'm still a bit conflicted. The overall design screams sort of testing prototype, proof of concept mule, science project, if you will. It has a certain appeal. It seems to me like the engineering team got together and said, okay, we need to test some technologies. We need to test our acoustic structures here for the planar driver. We need to test the rear chamber venting and a carrier for the planar driver. And we need to test the NOAA modules. So it literally is designed to accommodate those three features and nothing really else. I dig the whole sort of function over form design. It might look unfinished, and it 100% does look unfinished, but like I said, I kind of like it. This is like they got to the third or fourth sort of design prototype and said, all right, just release it. I did agonize quite a bit about where to put these on the cool wall because I actually do find them rather cool. But in deference to sort of everyone else's tastes who might not be an engineer or have worked in prototyping, I went ahead and ended up putting these in bland, mostly as a compromise. Depending on how I feel in the morning, if I've had my coffee, or how I'm feeling any particular day, I could see these going into cool, and I can see these going into uncool, and I honestly couldn't decide which, so I think bland is a sort of cop-out compromise. But hey, right now while filming, I honestly kind of dig the way they look in the camera here. Some of y'all may be thinking I was a bit too nice to these, but I have a pretty good feeling that the Council of Ladies is absolutely going to roast the overall looks of these. So let's not draw things out and get right to it. Clean sweep for the Quantum, a unanimous verdict of not pretty, tying the RDT10 for the worst score in this category. Moving on to compliments, we find the exact same score, 0.5, which means the RDT10 now has company as the worst rated IEM by the Council of Ladies in terms of looks. So let's see if we can see why by checking in on their comments. Lady number 1 did pick up on the sort of homemade vibes, or what I would call science project vibes. The rest of the ladies, however, boring, clunky, techie, and even some hate coming in from lady number 4. It's safe to say that while FatFreq can come up with some pretty stunning, gorgeous-looking designs for their customs IEMs, the Quantum here as a universal design just isn't much of a looker, and the ladies just don't dig the whole function over form aspect of it. When it comes to comfort, despite their unusual shape and weird nozzle location, honestly, for me, these worked pretty well. The bulbous lower shape here meant that it sat in my ears nicely. The nozzles meant I could get a nice fit with my ear tips. I was able to wear these for a 5-hour flight with no breaks or issues, and I was able to maintain a good seal the whole time. Great fit for me, honestly. My wife, on the other hand, failed these basically instantly with a score of laughably bad on the tiny ear test. These were so enormous and strangely shaped that she couldn't even get the tip of the nozzle here close enough to her ear canal to even attempt a seal, even with longer sort of stemmed ear tips. These were an absolute no-go for her. So I would say, if you have smaller ears, find someone who maybe has a pair and try them out, but I would most likely look elsewhere. The shape on these is very unusual, and I expect the fit will be an issue for a lot of folks, so even if you do have larger ears, I would highly recommend trialing these before you buy them. Before we get into the audio evaluation, I wanted to mention the NOAA modules that they include here and their effects on the overall sound signature of the Quantum. Speaking completely candidly, the Superstage modules are the special sauce on the Quantum here. There's a reason they're the default modules that come installed out of the box. They're the ones that I'll be reviewing here in the audio section, but for those of you who are curious about the black power and the blue control modules, the blue modules reduce the sub-bass and give you more of a traditional sort of timelessy Let Shure S12 style bass presentation. The black power modules are, to my ears, identical to the Superstage modules in terms of, bass and overall tuning, except for two things: vocals and Soundstage. The vocals and Soundstage on the black power modules are sort of I would say normal, again, sort of classic 7 hertz timeless type sound. The super stage modules, as I will repeat, are the special sauce here. And if, FatFreq or Bloom Audio or other stores stop offering all of the modules in the package with these, you need to pick a specific module. You want the super stage modules over the other two. And I think I'm going to try to articulate why. Quantum here is a FatFreq IEM, and as you would expect, the bass presentation here is excellent. Quantum here has quality and quantity of bass in spades. In typical FatFreq fashion, the sub bass is the star of the show, with the mid bass sort of taking a supporting role to keep the overall sound profile of the IEM clean and clear, while still having that fun, bass sub bass presentation. Bass Hunter's I'm Your Bass Creator is a good example of this. The lower, rumblier drops in the song have excellent texture and fantastic resolution, and the rumble comes across wonderfully in your head. You can feel, the air moving. The mid-bass beats, while nice and punchy, aren't as emphasized or as boosted as they could be in some other more bassier IEMs, even some other planars. But again, this is expected from FatFreq. It's a very crowd-pleasing way of doing bass. It's sort of their company signature. That isn't to say that bass guitars and kick drums are lacking in impact or body, because they aren't. Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar and that sort of funky bass line that accompanies the big drums, it sounds present, it has authority in the mix, it doesn't sound dominant, but it also doesn't get lost in the music. I do think FatFreq could have boosted the mid-bass a little more here without incurring sort of tonal penalties. It's what planars are amazing at. That isn't really FatFreq's style. They want to keep things as clean as possible. So while I personally would prefer more mid-bass here, I still think that this bass execution is excellent. The mids on the Quantum, as a result, are extremely clean. And then, as I said, that's for two reasons. Number one, this is a planar, so it has much less of a penalty for boosting mid-bass compared to a single dynamic driver or even a single balanced armature. And second, FatFreq has kept the mid-bass relatively controlled compared to the sub-bass. Fortunately, that doesn't mean that the lower mids are thin or lacking in body at all. They're warm, they're still lush, they have excellent weight to them. The Foo Fighters' Learn to Fly sounds great on Quantum. Guitars have great tonality. The bass guitar and the drums are all very easy to separate. There's no masking or tonal issues here. The vocals aren't overly warm. They also aren't overly lean. It's honestly just a really nice replay here. The Super Stage module changes up the way vocals were portrayed compared to the blue and black modules. The fundamentals are forward without being super in your face, yet there's still a bit of a focus on female vocals overall. Gloria Estefan's 1-2-3 is clearly the focus over the instrumentation. You hear her vocals, there's no off-tonality or unnatural sound to them, but similar to some other IEMs, I feel like certain fundamentals are de-emphasized, and then by coming in and boosting the harmonics, it sort of keeps female vocals clean without having them be too unnaturally forward. It gives them emphasis without having them be dominant. It's a tuning that I like, and I think the mid-range overall, again, very well executed. As far as upper mids and treble go, I already mentioned how the vocal harmonics on the Quantum here are boosted. I think that those harmonics add a nice layer of emphasis and clarity to female vocals without having female vocals come across as nasal or shouty. I think it's a very well-balanced vocal harmonic presentation. Stevie and Christine's vocals in Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, for example, I think sound really great here. The sustained vocal tones and the whispery sort of backing vocal passages have really nice harmonics that lift the vocals up out of the instruments a little bit. And I didn't get any sort of sibilance issues from the vocal harmonics here on the Quantum at all. They're very clean, the decay is nice, they don't overstay their welcome, they're not overcooked in my opinion in any way. Instrument and percussion harmonics are interesting. There's a good bit of energy up here, but I feel like all of those resonating structures in the Noah modules are doing work, because even after quite long listening sessions at what for me is a moderate to higher volume, I didn't experience any of that stealth fatigue that I can get with some planars. There is a good bit of upper treble airiness here, and while it does add some dimensionality to the sound that I'll talk about a bit later, one thing that I did encounter is it's enough energy that in some tracks, I saw it most in sort of old jazz, some live recordings that I listened to, even some more modern sort of EDM type stuff and some live rock and roll recordings, there is a sort of undercurrent of slightly unpleasant grainy tonality in the upper treble that appears. I noticed it the most in the live version of In Bloom by Nirvana that they recorded at the Great Western Forum in Los Angeles. The cymbals on that track sounded great. The guitar distortion is fantastic. The room effects, the honestly not great vocals coming off of Kurt Cobain, all those harmonics sounded really nice. Sitting underneath the replay, there was that subtle, rough, grainy layer to the sound, to the texture of all of the sort of upper treble that I picked up on. It didn't ruin the sound, and the overall sort of top-end sparkle and detail was still really great, but it is something that I noticed, and it's not something that I necessarily loved. I didn't hate it, but it also isn't to my tastes, let's just say. Bottom line, though, it was not fatiguing, which was really nice. The Quantum is an airy planar that isn't fatiguing, and very few other planars can say that. So overall, as far as the upper mids and treble go, I would say, well done, FatFreq. You join the airy and energetic, but not painful club of planars, which is a very limited company, honestly. Well done. At the end of the day, sitting behind the NOAA modules and the acoustic structures and all the venting, this is still a single large planar driver. So as you would expect, the technical performance here is right in line with the other really nicely executed planar drivers. That is to say, it's excellent. On the low end, that wonderful sub-bass texture that I was talking about makes it extremely easy to hear the subtle hand movements and finger details on the big drums in D'Angelo's Unshaken from the Red Dead Redemption 2 soundtrack. And as far as my now classic Waltz for Debbie listen to the glassware test, the Quantum, I think, did very well. It picked up on some of the more subtle dish sounds as well as some of the conversations happening in the background. I would say in terms of overall technical performance, this is in the top echelon of planar IEMs. It matches the S15, the ET142, and the Tangzhou Zetian Legend. Really great company to keep, honestly. Very well done with the technicals here, FatFreq. But now we come to what is, in my opinion, the party piece of the Quantum and what is by far my favorite part of this IEM. The stereo separation and the perceived 3D soundstage. Stereo separation on the Quantum here is just effortless. Saturday Night in San Francisco, particularly El Pañuelo, Bernie Grundman mastered Saturday Night in San Francisco to sort of mirror the mastering on Friday Night in San Francisco. So you've got Paco on the left, you've got Al on the right, as I mentioned before. But in El Pañuelo, you've got John McLaughlin in the middle, sort of filling in the space. And this track just sounds so wide on the Quantum. You've got the room effects from the Warwick Theater going on, you've got the audience noise, everything just sounds right. And each guitarist has plenty of room to do their thing, and they don't sound closed in or claustrophobic at all. That whole album, and live albums in general, is an awesome replay here. Speaking of room effects and spatial cues, the perceived 3D soundstage on Quantum, to my ears and my brain, with my testing tracks, was absolutely wicked. I loved listening to live albums on this. Spanish Harlem Orchestra's cover of Late in the Evening sounded just tall and open and wide. You get the vocalists spread out in front of you, you get different percussion in each ear, the instruments fill in the space behind you. The sound field, once all the instruments are going, just gets extremely busy and wonderful, and you have enough spatial information that you can place where each instrument is around you extremely easily. This sort of thing, I don't really like waxing lyrical or talking too much about because it's extremely subjective. I'm not going to come out here and claim that this is the experience that all of you will have. But for me, this is some of the best perceived 3D soundstage that I personally have ever experienced in an IEM, and it's what makes the Quantum, for me, truly special, which is why I'm saying if they only offer it with one module, get the Super Stage. Totally, totally worth it, because you don't get that with the other modules here. I tried. Yeah, the imaging and spatial information that this set can convey is absolutely bonkers, and it's what makes this special. So, in the end, the Quantum actually follows what I would call the classic planar V-shaped tuning, as we first saw on the Timeless, continued on by the S12, and remaining very popular to this day on things like the ET142. It is a tried and tested tuning for this type of driver, and rather than reinvent the wheel and try a new oddball tuning, FatFreq decided to put their own spin on a planar using the power of the Superstage module. The only other planar I've tried in this price range was the 64 Audio Solo. I tried them actually back to back, not this version, the prototype version, at CanJam Dallas, and in all honesty, I preferred the prototype version of this to the 64 Solo. That being said, the tuning here has changed since CanJam Dallas, so what I've done, since I don't have a solo, is I've lined up what I think the sort of planar competition to the Quantum is. But real quick, before we get started, I wanted to mention the SIMGOT ET142. Yes, the ET142 can match sort of the overall tonal profile of the Quantum. Specifically, if you use these short black nozzles, it can get pretty close to this. It will not recreate the Soundstage that the Quantum has here. And it does lack a little bit of the upper treble energy that the Quantum can provide. It doesn't have that graininess that the Quantum has, which can be a good thing, but it also isn't as energetic in the upper treble as the Quantum is. And whether or not you want that is up to you. ET142 will not be getting a full comparison here. I just wanted to bring it up because the ET142's chameleon status remains very strong. It mostly can emulate the Quantum's tuning so long as you understand you're not going to get the Soundstage that this has. So we'll kick off the real comparisons with two IEMs that I felt that the Quantum was going to take tuning inspiration from, at least based on what I heard at CanJam Dallas. Those being the Let's Shure S08 and the RD T10 Pro, priced at $100 and $110 respectively. A/B seeing these side by side was extremely interesting. In terms of sub-bass depth and texture, the Quantum beats the other two quite easily. But what surprised me was how much thump and slam these two brought to the table compared to the Quantum. I legit think that both the T10 Pro and the S08 offer a bassier, more punchy, sort of exciting mid-bass presentation compared to the Quantum. Again, that's typical FatFreq. They tend to cut back the mid-bass to provide cleaner, clearer mids, and that's the case here. Outside of the bass, however, the Quantum sounds kind of like a hybrid of these two. It's got the more forward vocals that the S08 has, and it has the safe, non-fatiguing, airy treble sparkle that the T10 Pro has. With the Quantum, you can get the best of both worlds. One thing I will say, the T10 Pro's treble, while very, very close in overall energy and, sort of sparkle to the Quantum, it does not have that sort of grainy texture at the high end that the Quantum has. The T10 Pro is cleaner in that respect. It sounds a bit more natural and a bit less intense than the Quantum. In terms of imaging and soundstage, the Quantum absolutely smashes the both of them, but this comparison is really more for just informative purposes. The people who are going to be shopping for the S08 and the T10 Pro are not going to have the Quantum on their shopping list. But I'm a Planar fanboy, so I thought this comparison was interesting because FatFreq is sort of known as the bass IEM people, and these are the two bassiest Planars according to me, so I wanted to compare them. I'm talking about Planars, and I'm talking about Soundstage, so you know that the king had to make an appearance. It is the Hidizs MP145, priced at $160 US. The MP145's sort of king of soundstage crown has been usurped by the Quantum. And to my ears and my testing tracks, it honestly isn't even close. In terms of overall tuning, the MP145 here is sort of similar to the T10 Pro. I will say the MP145, like the Quantum, does have that slightly grainy treble presentation that I don't necessarily love, but don't mind. The Quantum is honestly an MP145, but just a little bit better in a whole lot of areas. It's got better sub-bass, it's got better vocals, it's got smoother treble. Yeah, it still has a little bit of graininess at the top end, but it's overall better, and the graininess I think is more palatable on here than it is on the MP145. Again, in terms of price, there's a yawning chasm between these two, but this comparison is still very interesting to me, especially since if you look at the overall size of these shells, they're actually a lot closer. Let me get the cable out of the way there. They're actually a lot closer in terms of overall size than you would think. So, yeah, these two I can sort of think as sort of spiritual brothers, if you will. Extremely large shells, but my god, the soundstage. Now we come to the timeless family of IEMs priced between $200 and $260, depending on the model, when you bought it, when you're shopping, what's on sale. I have the timeless AE here representing the group. I'll stick it right there. I mentioned earlier that the Quantum's tuning with the Superstage module is essentially FatFreq's spin on the sort of classic timeless V-shaped planar sound. That's a very good thing. If you look at the timeless AE, and the timeless 2, 7 Hz themselves hasn't really changed the tuning much over the years. Quantum is basically a timeless with better, more quality sub bass, more forward vocals, and more airiness in the upper treble that is more present while also not being fatiguing. Yeah, it still has that slight graininess in the treble, but as I mentioned in the music section, I feel like it's very well controlled and it doesn't absolutely ruin anything. Again, as you'd expect, the Quantum smashes the Timeless's Timelie in terms of imaging and perceived 3D soundstage, but as I say, that's the special sauce that FatFreq has brought to the table here. They've taken the sort of classic timeless tuning, put their special sauce on it, and they've made something pretty unique. Finally, I really couldn't resist bringing this one out, but in full fairness, all we've been looking at so far are IEMs that are priced less than half of the Quantum. In some cases, you can get 6 or 7 of them for the price of a single Quantum. So maybe it's time to even things up a bit and look at something that's even above the Quantum's weight class. That being the Craft Ears Omnium, priced at $2,700 US. And here is where the Quantum starts to lose battles. The Omnium matches the Quantum in terms of sub-bass rumble and sub-bass texture, and while this is the least mid-bassy IEM here, the mids on the Omnium have the same richness and clarity that the Quantum have. And in fact, they're even a little bit nicer on the Omnium than they are on the Quantum. Overall, to me, in terms of tuning, A being these, the Omnium comes off as a bit brighter. The cymbals have more sparkle and shine to them. The wash on them just feels cleaner and more energetic. And the treble, again, while more or just as energetic as the Quantum, especially up in the air region, this doesn't have that grainy texture that the Quantum has. In terms of soundstage, the Quantum is a very clear step up from the MP145, the S08, Timeless, the T10 Pro, everything that we've looked at. It's a very clear step from those 4 to the Quantum. It's another clear step from the Quantum to the Omnium. But again, this is nearly 4 times the price of this, so I expect the Omnium to beat the Quantum. If there's one thing that the Quantum has going for it, for me personally, compared to the Omnium, that is, the reason the Omnium is in its case, is it's going on to the next reviewer, probably tomorrow. The Quantum is mine, which means I get to keep it. Alright, let's do a quick wrap-up. Want the most relaxing planar here with fantastic bass, great female vocals, but, more subdued treble? S08, fantastic all-rounder. Want that, but want more treble sparkle and more subdued female vocals? T10 Pro, still an amazing all-rounder. Like the T10 Pro, but are willing to trade in the nice cable and the nice accessories package and sacrifice it in exchange for more soundstage? Assuming it fits in your ears, the MP145, still a solid choice. Not really into the whole warm, bassy planar thing. Want something a bit more V-shaped, less mid-bass, more treble. Any of the Timelesses are good. Pick up whichever one you can get on sale. Will still sound amazing. Got some extra cash laying around. Want sort of all of these rolled into one. All the good qualities of these, plus some absolutely amazing soundstage without being fatiguing. Quantum is your choice. It's really, really nice. FatFreq did a good job. Won the lottery? Want to get the absolute best soundstage I've ever heard in IEM and some of the best details? Go get some ear molds made, call up Craft Ears, and get yourself a custom Omnium. But yeah, that basically wraps all these up. Let's move on to the rankings. And as I said, with the comparisons done, it's time to see where FatFreq's Quantum is going to rank on the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. Quantum was a bit of a difficult IEM to rank. It's got some amazing sound, but it's also got some pretty obvious shortcomings in my opinion. First off, the shape and size here. FatFreq wanted to create the ultimate planar IEM, and they used all of their acoustic structure, wizardry, and bag of tricks to do it. What this resulted in is a pretty large, oddly shaped IEM that, quite frankly, will just not work for everybody's ears. FatFreq also made what is, in my opinion, a bit of a head-scratching decision by choosing to include the Aries S2 cable as your sort of default stock cable option. This, without a doubt, increased the overall price, and honestly, personally, I would rather have had a modular version of one of FatFreq's stock cables instead and seen the Quantum here at a lower price than what we ended up with. But FatFreq is not the only brand that's doing this. Tangzhou, Elysian, a couple of other brands have done sort of cable collabs, and honestly, as of right now, I think unnecessary cable collabs might be in the running for worst new trend of 2025 in my awards show at the end of the year. The accessories overall, honestly, typical for FatFreq, but a bit of a disappointment, honestly. The S08 and the T10 Pro, which I mentioned earlier, cost 1/7 of what this costs, and in my opinion, come with a much more comprehensive accessories package. The tuning here isn't anything super special in terms of overall tonal balance. It's a timeless with more sub-bass. It's an ET142 with a bit more upper treble air. Its overall tonal balance with the black or blue modules isn't really anything all that special to me, in all honesty. With the Superstage modules, though, okay, the Quantum shows what it's absolutely best at, what in my opinion it was designed to do. With live albums and sort of tracks that have been mastered to increase the sort of spatial information that they have, the Quantum provides a level of soundstage and imaging that I quite frankly have not heard in any other planar IEM. That's the special sauce here. The Quantum very quickly became my go-to IEM for live albums, and despite its science project looks and build, I couldn't help but like this thing. It's similar to the Brain Dance and the Cantor in that it's not perfect. It was going for one very specific thing, and it made sacrifices to get there. But once you got there, it is something special. Because of those sacrifices, like the Brain Dance and the Cantor, I can't recommend it to everybody, but man, this is another IEM that essentially defines the "but I like this" tier. It should also show a little bit of my bias. I personally like passive EQ engineering. Acoustic structures, passive components, sonic mazes, passive RLC networks, impedance adapters, all that sort of stuff I just really like. And I have a soft spot for smaller, more boutique companies that are doing, innovative audio engineering things. That being said, y'all know how seriously I take my rating list. I'm not spending my money, I'm spending y'all's money. And while I would recommend the Quantum to some people, it is absolutely not for everybody. Which I think segues rather neatly into my recommendation section. The Quantum, first of all, will really only be interesting to people who can afford it. Again, buyers will self-select. I'm not going to be the one to argue value proposition here. If you're the kind of person who has $775, $800 to spend on an IEM, I will say this won't be for you if you want a more neutral, analytical sounding IEM. This, I think, is too bassy and fun to be that for you. I also don't think this is for you if you're looking for the absolute peak of technical performance in this sort of price range. The fact of the matter is, at $775, the tribrids, hybrids, and more brids in this price range can eclipse the sort of technical mojo that a single planar can do in terms of pure technical performance. Finally, if you have small ears, the absolute chonk factor of these shells will most likely result in a very awkward, potentially painful fit for you. So I would definitely try these before you end up buying them. As for who I would recommend this for, though, honestly, people like me, planar fanboys who want to see single planar drivers pushed to their absolute limits using acoustic structures and fancy tricks. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. This product seems like it was sort of tailor-made for me. This is also for people who want the absolute best quality sub-bass response from a planar IEM. This is, almost indistinguishable, in my opinion, better than even very high-quality DDs. I think FatFreq has absolutely pulled that off here. Lastly, if you've got a library chock full of live albums, live recordings, things that have been mastered to be very wide, tall, provide a lot of spatial information, the Quantum can provide you with kilobuck levels of soundstage for less. I know for me personally, it will help fill the Omnium-shaped hole in my heart. One thing I will add here at the end. If you're interested in the Quantum, I would personally order from Bloom Audio or another third-party store just to be absolutely certain that you'll get it in terms of fulfillment and on a sort of decent time scale. One thing I will say, FatFreq appears to be on the ball and is releasing the Quantum extremely quickly in batches. They very clearly have learned something from the entire Deuce debacle. They're not just having open pre-orders and filling them in when they can. They're doing batched orders and batch deliveries on a very nice time scale. However, I value you guys' money too much. So, Unless you have the discount coupon from the Deuce pre-order, I would be buying these from Bloom Audio or somewhere else rather than directly from FatFreq. If you have the discount coupon, however, I would buy from FatFreq because their batch system appears to be doing really good things for their overall fulfillment. And that's it for the FatFreq Quantum review. I like this thing. I'm supposed to. It's sort of targeting Planar fanboys like me specifically. I do have a review for the Deuce coming. The reason I haven't reviewed it is I wanted to hold off on reviewing it until I could sort of sift through the, let's say, complicated feelings I had for the company in my brain, just because of the very negative customer service experience that I had with them during the Deuce pre-order campaign. That video is coming sooner rather than later, and I am doing the Tales of Customer Service video because even with the release of the Quantum and the sort of lessons that they've learned from the Deuce pre-order campaign, I think that the experience is important to share, and I think that some things in that video still apply to FatFreq today. So look forward to both of those videos. For now, however, that's going to do it for me. The next video will be on the Moondrop Rays, as usual. Just want to say thanks to all of you for watching, and thank you all for your continued support. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I will catch y'all next time.